Okay, this video we're going to take our very recently wood-filled picture frame. We filled all of our nail holes, and then if we had any gaps on corners or faces, so like in the demo I had a tiny little bit of filler here, and I had a little bit of filler on this corner right here. We're going to take that and sand it off. So before we go into the shop, you need to make sure you have your picture frame. Again, please check that it's actually your frame here. And you're gonna grab your sandpaper as well, left over from the initial hand sanding. We're gonna take these back. I'm gonna show you some of the very careful techniques for removing the wood filler without destroying the finish on your frame. This is the one step where if you had a really nice clean glue up and you had a pretty decently clean wood filling session, final sanding can be the difference between having a really nice, neat picture frame or having something that is so scratched and disgusting looking it's bad. So the rule for this one is we do not want to cross grain sand. If you remember, our sanding goes with the grain. So at the corners, we have to be very careful. We don't want to cross grain sand across there or coming down here across that, because you'll have deep scratches that will not come out on the face of your wood. So we're gonna have to make sure that we go with the grain from the corners out if you have any filler. Now these ones, I don't have any filler, but this one, I got this tiny little bit of filler on there. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little tiny cloud of filler. I'm gonna have to very carefully sand that and not destroy it. The edges are a little easier, but you still gotta be careful in the corners where you filled. So have your frame, have your sandpaper. We're gonna go grab safety glasses. So again, safety glasses cabinet. If you do not wear glasses, any from the top 3. If you do wear glasses, get them from the bottom 2. Grab them by the bows, get them on, and close it so they don't get dusty. You're gonna grab your frame and your sandpaper. Coming back into the shop, again, check to make sure you're cleared to go into the shop at the beginning of class. If the class is working, then come in. You will need to grab hearing protection. Again, maybe some tool usage at this point, but for sure your teacher is gonna be using the air hose to dust off people's wood and to run air nails for the stapling part. It will be noisy. So hearing protection is going to be important. Make sure you put that on. And then we are ready to head down. Now for this, again, it can be any of the regular tables or workbenches, but not the one with the drop cloth from wood filler. That is only for wood filling. Do not use that table. You do not want to get any extra things on there. So we're just gonna work at the standard workbench here. Now, this is where I highly recommend you visit the basket of sanding blocks. You wanna be able to make sure you have a nice, flat, controlled sanding. So you're gonna grab a sanding block. And what I like to do, since this is our kind of leftover paper, I'm gonna break off for the edges and doing the nail holes. I want to break off a piece of sandpaper about 1 inch to 2 inches wide. So I'm just going to literally fold this over. So I have 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And by folding it with the sandpaper facing itself, and then fold back on that crease, and then fold it one more time. If you kind of crease that down, you should be able to tear that pretty easily. I'm gonna take this piece, the bigger piece, and save it. I'm gonna take my little piece with the sanding block, and I'm going to wrap this around the sanding block so I have a way that I can hold that on there tight. I want that nice and tight so it's sitting flat on those edges. So I'm gonna take this and I am going to sand the edges where the nails were filled. So I'm gonna make sure I go with the grain so I can sand off this filler here. Again, being careful if I have a round over, I don't wanna sand off too much. So I'm gonna go with the grain. I actually just keep my wood right in line here and get that spot really quickly. Do a few passes and check it. Okay, so I'll clean that off. I don't know if you can see in the video, but there's just a tiny little halo around there still. So I'm going to do that. I want to make sure that the sandpaper is flat so I'm not digging out the hole. We spent time last night making sure, our last video, making sure that we didn't dig out the filler when we were scraping it off. We want to make sure we don't do that now. So I've got pretty close. I've got one tiny little spot left around there. Okay, that one is filled. And depending on your wood and the grain, you might not even see the nail hole. From certain directions, it's really hard to see on mine. So I'm just gonna go around and do these. Now this one, I also have this corner filled, so I'm gonna be really careful not to over sand that too much so I can come back and touch that up if I need to. So I'm gonna do my nail holes here real quick. Got a little bit left here, just outside the hole. I'm doing very moderate pressure. I'm not pushing super hard. I don't want to risk scratching. So that part of my sandpaper is getting kind of full because that wood filler really fills in the pores of the paper. So I'm just going to kind of rotate my paper around my block so I have a fresh patch of sandpaper here. And I'm just going to keep doing that and finish up this. That's good. Now I have a little sharp corner hanging off here, so I'm gonna kind of make sure I can carry over my round over that way. I'm gonna try to finish my round over that way, then I'm gonna come back very lightly. I am hardly touching it at all. But here you can kind of see that that corner is now nice and even. And there's no gap in there. It's all taken care of. And it looks good. I'm going with the grain on the round over. Everything is touched up. I'm gonna keep going with my nail holes real quick. A little bit left on that one. A little bit left, so my paper is getting full again. So I'm going to kind of rotate around to the other side of the block and use this clean part. Almost done, a little bit extra right here. Okay, tiny bit left here on this one. Again, it's better to go take little bits off at a time and take a couple extra moments to get it right instead of just going all gung-ho and scratching it up or sanding off more than you should. All right, so I got that one pretty good. I'm gonna go to my last nail hole here that I need to fill. And then I'm going to show you how to do the one face seam that I had on mine. Now this one I don't have as much filler, so keep in mind that as long as it's taking me to sand these, the more filler you have, the longer it's going to take you to sand. Because you have to remove all of that filler off of the face in order for it to take stain appropriately. If you leave that filler on the face of your picture frame, it is going to soak up and absorb the stain, which is the next step. It's going to absorb that stain kind of unevenly, and it actually gets fuzzy because it absorbs that moisture. So I've got my nail holes now all cleaned up. No residual wood filler. Take that back, there's one little spot. There, I got it. So now I'm gonna look for any of my seams that I did on the faces. And I have this one little seam right here. I don't know if you can see in the video. There's just a tiny little bit of yellowish cloud of the filler right on the face here. So this is gonna be the hardest part to show, but I'm gonna do my best to explain it. So what you're gonna do with your sandpaper now, if this is trashed, it's all kind of used up for what I can grab. So I'm gonna grab my other sheet of sandpaper here. And I'm going to basically almost the whole width of it here. So I'm going to wrap this around the block, again, nice and tight, because I don't want that coming loose. And I'm going to use the edge of the block and the sandpaper to clean this off. So what I'm going to do, the cloud is pretty much on this side, so it kind of fans out that way. So what I'm going to do is set my block, try to get it in the light so you can see, set the corner of my block along the corner here, the joint of the pieces of wood. Now the important thing is I'm going to move it the direction of the wood grain, very, very light pressure. So I'm just going to very lightly take that, make sure I'm lined up, and make sure I'm going with the grain. I'm not going straight out this way. I'm not going back this way. I'm going with the grain here. And I am just ever so slightly taking these little puffs of filler. Super light pressure. I'm just using the corner to focus. And again, I'm going with the grain, not straight out this way, with the grain this way, keeping my angle lined up. Little light, tiny little sanding, very little pressure. And I have about 90% of that off already just in that little bit. So I'm going to practice a little bit more, get it lined up on the edge. Again, I am hardly moving. I'm moving at most 1/4 to 1/2 inch down the piece of wood. And I'm barely touching the sandpaper to it because I don't want to push hard here and scratch it. So I got that side pretty good. There's a little bit left on this side. So I'm just going to turn the wood and kind of go the other way here. So I'm going to set the edge on here, edge of the block at the edge of the corner, right on the edge of the seam, tilt it, and I'm going to go with the grain this way. Now there wasn't as much on this, so I probably won't have to do as much. So again, just short with the grain, going this way. It's not all the way down there, so I'm just going to do this little part right here. Little dust off. And I have that as good as it is possibly going to get without risking damaging. So you can't really see, unless you really get in there. There's one little spot here. But unless you really get in there with a microscope, you're not going to see it much, especially when you stain. So there's no big cloud around here. I don't have any other filler sticking around, hanging on any other faces. It's just that little tiny spot that I got filled in and then cleaned out. Now, if you have a little bit of filler in this corner, like I do here, this is where you got to be really careful. You're going to take your sandpaper, you're going to take the edge of your sandpaper, so just the little edge. You may have to kind of fold it up, but you're going to go into the corner to get that little glob of filler out. I don't know if you guys can see that. Just kind of lightly sanding again with the grain. And again, barely touching and just kind of putting the edge of the paper on there so I can get that glob of filler cleaned out. So now I have no visible wood filler. My holes are good. The corner that I patched down here is so good I almost couldn't see it. There's just a little bit there right where I filled it. And then I got my one little seam there. So I am done sanding. I'm gonna have the teacher come check it. The teacher is going to come and dust it off and do a final check. You do not use the hose, the teacher does. Headphone warning right now. It's gonna be loud. In 3, 2, 1. So the teacher is going to check that, make sure it's all cleaned off, there's no filler. Once you have this done, you need to protect this thing and keep it safe as possible. If you have little torn up scraps of sandpaper, you can throw those away. If you have a little bit left, hold on to that. You might actually need that for the glass. The glass is actually a plastic and sometimes it has a rough edge, so you might need to sand that down. So keep your little piece left over, put the block in there. We're going to clean the workbench. Where you were sanding, even if there's hardly anything, there's gonna be dust. So we're gonna do a quick little sand where you were working. That goes into the garbage can. That can go back under the table. And then you're gonna take your finished sanded picture frame and your sandpaper back to the cabinet over here to put your hearing protection away. Again, be very careful setting this down. You don't want to get anything on it and you don't want to scratch it. So we're going to take headphones, put them in the cabinet up here, close it again. Still have your glasses on. We're going to go back out to the classroom and we are going to open the door, gently close the door, and we're going to put your safety glasses back on the shelf where you got them by the bows. That closed up, you're gonna put these safely into your tub. And then once you've got that done, you're gonna watch the stain video, which is the next video. All right. Be careful, be very, very careful with your sanding. Remember, do not go across the corners. If you go across the corners in cross-grain sand, you will lose a ton of points on your sanding and you will see deep scratches across the grain. So with the angle and with the grain, never across the seams on your wood. Take your time on this one. Be careful, use light pressure and use those sanding blocks to help you be more accurate. Again, once you got that done, this is gonna go in your tub. Keep it safe. Watch the next video for stain. Enjoy.